We advertise this at 6 p.m. We could be a little bit flexible as we go, but I want to sort of try to touch base on a lot of different subjects tonight, and I really appreciate we're here at the Locust Valley Fish and Game Club, and really appreciate the different hosts all over the state, and I appreciate being here tonight. And we're in Representative Barton's district, and he has a Second Amendment, no, actually it's a concealed carry seminar tonight, and so he was going to stop by, but we sort of always have that challenge with the schedule. I always say if I could figure out how to be in two places at once, the problem would be we'd probably have to be at three places at once, so there's never a good answer to it. So why don't we stand and do the pledge and get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Okay. So what we would like to try to do here tonight is sort of start out slow with what we have done in the past, give you a little bit of a idea of why we're here, some of the history of Fish and Game, the Sportsman's issues, and just to be clear, this type of event has not been done in the history of Pennsylvania. And so for me, the passion to get to the sportsmen and give them an opportunity and to have a listening tour, as we call it, has been very important to me. And I'm excited to be able to go to different places in the state and do that. I'm here with Griffin Caruso. He is my executive director. We have some AV folks. That's the hundreds of miles of wires that you see with all the microphones and video. It's amazing to see that get into place, and I really appreciate their expertise and the way they make this happen. So what this also does is this allows us to not just record this and video this live, but it allows this to be a link that any of you folks, anybody can get on. And believe me, when this gets publicized, the Game Commission is one of the first ones to jump on, because they're always interested in what happens, because it's really your opinion that they don't listen to. So it's an opportunity for everybody, quite frankly, and it also brings accountability. So again, Griffin, why don't we, and let me just tell you how I sort of operate here. Griffin will go over some things. We're going to have some video, which is really awesome, and I'll probably interrupt. That's kind of the way it works best, to sort of interrupt when there's something important to say or to bring up, or to just interject into the conversation. So go ahead, Griffin.
Thank you, Chairman. So here's the agenda for the day. First, we're going to just discuss what is the Pennsylvania Game Commission, what is the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, who are the commissioners, the election of commissioners. We'll talk about that idea. We'll talk about chronic wasting disease and some concerns the chairman has. And then we'll conclude with open conversation where we will talk about anything on your mind. So let's begin with what is the Game Commission. Many of you in this room know what is the Game Commission, but these are just some background into how they started and what really their mission is. So they started back in 1895 to protect and conserve wildlife. They didn't start to encourage hunting. You didn't need to encourage hunting in 1895, but that's kind of what they turned into. It is their mission, in their own words, to manage and protect wildlife and their habitats while promoting hunting and trapping for current and future generations. Some of their key functions, we're all aware of what they do for wildlife management, food plots, law enforcement, ensuring no one's poaching, and public engagement, helping people to learn how to hunt and get into the woods. Their director is Stephen Smith. The Fish and Boat Commission. They were established back in 1866, initially to encourage the Chad population, but their responsibilities have greatly grown over time In their own words, they protect, conserve, and enhance the Commonwealth's aquatic resources and provide fishing and boating opportunities. Their key functions are regulation and enforcement, and people don't know this, but they are also responsible for amphibians and reptiles, even though it's the Fish and Boat Commission. Education and outreach, resource management. They manage a lot of our waters, stock our waters. We're all familiar and we love it. And their director is Tim Schaefer. Both commissions are funded with your money. They are not funded through the general fund, through our tax dollars. It's the money of sportsmen, of boaters, of anglers. They're outside the realm of most government agencies. And largely independent. They make their own regulations. They operate outside of the legislature.
And I'm going to just interrupt right there. This is going to be my first interruption of many. So that's very important. It's very important. I think it's something that in the early days was a vision for several reasons. One being that you would separate our fish and game and those issues away from what layman's terms would be and what the folks would like to say is to keep it out of politics. However, you'll also hear me say things like, everybody's a politician. Politics comes from the word policy. And so for me, being a policymaker in many aspects of my life, it has to do what would drive you, what would be your mission statement, and how you would develop that policy to really satisfy that endeavor. But I'm going to get pretty sharp, and I'm going to tell you that the Game Commission as a whole from Elmerton Avenue has become a political hack job. That's what they have become, because what they do is they look at an interest that they may have within themselves, not from what the sportsmen want. That's, again, why we're here today. We'll get into a piece of legislation that I proposed some time ago. Griffin will explain that, and he'll explain, and I'll be able to interject why I think that. So I just want to say something about the budget. Because the budget as a whole has nothing to do with the fish and boat. I got a text today, I'm very transparent about these things, from somebody who asked me who that they could talk to because they did a job for the Game Commission. And look, they're going to be watching this, okay? So there's going to be them hearing this today. That they used the excuse that they couldn't pay them because the budget wasn't passed. You realize what a fat lie that is? Okay? They're independent. They have $500-600 million in reserve, and I'm glad for that. That's supposed to be our money. Okay? So my point is, right now you're hearing this budget, and I get it. I think we all get it. But let's be honest about what impacts our lives with the budget. And it's not the Game Commission or the Fish Commission. The Fish Commission only receives monies from Act 89, which is a little bit of a provision put in there back in the day when they passed the massive gas tax. And what that does is it allows the monies that are being bought for the gasoline for boats, for that tax to go back to the Fish Commission. That's why I have to bring that up, because that's about the only thing that really impacts separately from the budget. Does that make sense? I hope. Just nod your heads. I know you understand what I mean, but I want to make those things clear, because a lot of times there's a misconception of where the monies come from, okay? And I don't want, in this sort of arena that we're living in right now, where all these agencies are being told by the governor, go out and use your bully pulpit to say you need to pass the budget because your life is going to end tomorrow. That's sort of the rhetoric that we're hearing right now. But I want to clear that up because we are living in the midst of that right now.
All right, so now we know what is the Game Commission, what is the Fish and Boat Commission. Now, who are the commissioners? So what is a Game Commissioner? What is a Fish and Boat Commissioner? First and foremost, they're an appointee. there's a group called the Governor's Advisory Council. This is unelected, faceless people. We don't actually know who they are. They suggest people to the governor. The governor then chooses one of those people to be a commissioner, and that person then must be confirmed by the Senate.
Really, he doesn't choose them. And I'm going to be a little bit bold here again. What happens is it's a political maneuver amongst the Senate and the individuals who may have showed an interest, right, wrong, or indifferent. Let's be clear. Then that person gets moved to the front, if you will, and a deal was made behind the scenes, and basically that's how you get your commissioner. So that's why we want to clear this up, which will also go to a bill.
Commissioners are regulators. These are the people that actually vote on the regulations we all need to comply with. Now, the regulations are based in law, but law that the chairman would vote for is general. We don't have seasons. We don't have bag limits in the law. That's what the commissioners determine. They're volunteers. Commissioners are not paid. They do get to travel for free and do commission activities for free, but they're not paid. They are a vote. Each commissioner has one vote on their respective commission, and a majority vote makes things happen. And finally, they are representatives, in a sense. Commissioners are supposed to represent the regions where they are from. So we have the Game Commission regions here. There are 9 regions and 9 commissioners. We're in Schuylkill County, correct? Does anyone know who the Game Commissioner is for Schuylkill County? District 9? I didn't hear it. It's Rob Schwalm. So he is your Game Commission commissioner. And then the Fish and Boat Commission, they have 10 commissioners. 8 represent regions, and 2 are at-large boating commissioners. The 2 at-large boating commissioners just represent boating interests throughout the entire state. Again, we're in Schuylkill County. That's Fish and Boat Commission 8, District 8. Anyone know? Anyone know? Richard Kaufman. And
both of which are also where I live in Berks County, both of which are also my shared commissioners. Same one. I didn't have my microphone on, but they were the same commissioners for me personally, and that's why it matters. But I mean, I'm only a county away with where I live.
And then the 2 voting at-large commissioners are Charlie Charlesworth and Richard Lewis. So we know who the commissioners are, what they do, how they get appointed, but what if we were to elect our commissioners? The chairman has noted that we elect judges, coroners, school board members, and we would want our commissioners to truly be representative of the sportsmen in a region. This is pro-democracy, pro-transparency, encourages accountability. You would actually know who represents you within the commission. But is there a plan to do something like this? Well, there is a plan. I've worked quite hard on it at the chairman's direction. It's long, a lot of paper, but we have it. There's a bill. It's in the House, and it hasn't been considered yet, but it could any day. How exactly does this plan work? Well, it's House Bill 746. I have it right here. And the plan is, let's say a commissioner is about to retire or leave office. Sportsmen's clubs, like the one we're in right now, would nominate a new candidate for that office. Those nominations would be compiled and then shared with the sportsmen within a district. Sportsmen would then vote for one of those candidates. The governor would then get to choose between the top 3 vote recipients in a region. Now, the sportsmen's clubs nominate, the sportsmen vote, and then the governor chooses. Everyone gets a little bit of something in this equation.
Go ahead, sir.
You're saying sportsmen, would that be license holders?
Very good question. That we had to define that in the law, and yes, it would be U.S. citizens 18 or older holding a hunting license for 3 consecutive years. That's what we determined.
And in the regions, and of course, just so you know this, as we sort of navigated the do's and the don'ts of the law and the proposal, it doesn't mean anything is etched in stone, but it does allow a starting point. And there are things that I would love to be, more strict about, but it was also a starting point. And I felt that it was something that we needed to be able to show that somebody had a vested interest, somebody was interested in the outcome. Somebody was interested in maybe it was the numbers in a club that you didn't have a lot of age differences, so we wanted to be able to be clear. Look, I'm in my 53rd year, so I show kind of my age with that. So for me, it would be easy for me to say, oh, I think you need a little bit more experience. But here's the thing. I would like people to be a part of the process that, think about what Griffin explained. The top 3 vote getters. That doesn't mean that the first person's guaranteed. So even that in itself is sort of flawed, if you know what I mean. But it also gives a little bit of a leadway if somebody thinks there was an issue, okay? It still gives the governor a choice of the top 3. Here's where the rub comes in, my friends. The Senate is out of it, as they should be. And the reason I say it that way is because the House isn't in it. We don't get any skin in the game. Why should the Senate be the ones going behind the closed doors, making a deal with the governor to get a commissioner in? Want to know how some of the commissioners are? Look, I'm going to step on toes. I'm known for that. But here's why I say it that way. If it hurts, it's not my fault. Do you understand what I mean? Tom Wolf appointed at least one commissioner, right? The man's wife played pinochle with his wife. That's how he got the job. That's not a sportsman in my mind. That's not a viable, with merit, individual looking out for the sportsman's interest. I take offense to it. I truly do as a sportsman. And so for me to be aggressive, I want to be able to get something going that sportsmen are a part of. They get to be a decision maker, if you will. And think about it. You vote for your tax collector. You vote for just about everybody in any kind of office except for them. Okay? And we can go over some of the things that have happened with the Game Commission over the years, and it's all political. Okay? And I'll give you one to throw it out there. Deer management was not done by science. It was done by politics. Quote, unquote, by their own biologists. Now, I want you to think about that as you sit and listen to tonight. That's what was said. The reason we no longer have county treasurers taking care of the antlerless tags is because a certain executive director had a pet peeve against a county treasurer. He moved to create wildlife management units because of that. That's not the best of the sportsmen, in my opinion. Okay? And quite frankly, it's embarrassing to say that you're now going to manage wildlife in a giant zone like this when you could have concentrated on a zone like this. You'd be a little bit more concentrated and better be able to organize something here than something like this. Okay? You may agree or disagree, but the fact of the matter is that's how it happened.
And then just as a final fail-safe, the House or Senate Game and Fisheries Committees could ratify the selection. They could ratify the person, they can ratify the process, or be against it altogether. This could be us. This could be us voting. All right, here's an example for you just to flesh it all out. So Game Commissioner Schwalm, your commissioner, is approaching the end of his term, 90 days. There's Schuylkill County, there's Commissioner Schwalm. The Game Commission informs sportsmen's clubs in this region that they should nominate a new prospective commissioner. They have 30 days to nominate one. 30 days after this club were to nominate someone, the sportsmen could vote. They could vote at any point of sale where they get their license. The governor would pick one of those top 3 candidates within 30 days, and then the House and the Senate Game and Fisheries Committee could confirm or deny or do nothing within 5 legislative days.
Now, we haven't really had much back and forth on this because I think most of the time, the way Griffin explained that has fallen on very reasonable ears, and people like the idea because they've never had the choice before. So my question right now for a quick conversation would be, is anybody in this room against, for, or have a suggestion that as a club member, something that would work to be comfortable in that process? How about a show of hands on whether or not you agree with the Sportsmen choosing their commissioner? Anybody against choosing their own commissioner? Thank you very much. I think that's pretty unanimous. So I appreciate that. I never did that before. As I said, I'm sort of a moving target as these go along, but I think it's important to engage you guys and gals because this is who we are to be. Go ahead.
Yeah, Chairman, I think we should ask that question at every one of our
right.
listening tours. So we're all in agreement that we would like to vote for our commissioners and perhaps flesh this idea out a little bit more. So how do we make that happen? Talk about it. Tell the Game Commission, tell the Fish and Boat Commission that you're in favor of this idea. Talk to your local representative, your senator, and say, hey, Chairman Maloney has a good idea. Maybe we should look into it. And that's the best we can do. We're in the minority. We don't control what happens in the House, but that's the best we can do.
We're in the minority by one, folks, and I will tell you this. If I was in the majority by one, or even a half, that's a joke. But this bill would have ran my first week in office. That's how important I think it is to the sportsmen of Pennsylvania. And we would have been able to at least, flush out some of the issues.
All right, on to the next part of our agenda, chronic wasting disease concerns. This is something that the chairman really cares tremendously about. And would you like to discuss the video we're about to watch?
Yeah, and I really appreciate it, Griffin. That was a good segue. I want to put myself in a position where I want you guys to understand that I'm not a biologist, I'm not a scientist in any way, shape, or form, nor do I want to be. Let me be clear about that. But I can read. And I was taught to study. And I think I can apply myself. I really like the example recently of Charlie Kirk. He was a self-made individual. It was always the way I was sort of directed. And I think we put ourselves down sometimes if we write ourselves off because there isn't some sort of letter behind our name. Okay? And here's one of the things that I'm going to compare it with, because it goes right to CWD. You can have some of the best so-called science minds in the world in this room, and you're going to get a lot of disagreements. That almost doesn't make sense if you think about it, because you'll often hear the term that science is the answer. Well, how about COVID? How'd that work out? Okay? And we're not going to discuss that. But just think about that. How'd that work out? All right? So this is where I go with the CWD. I just talked to a young man who just took a job, an intern, and he's really rambunctious, if you will, and energized to get into this. And I said, I just want you to understand that there have been many a person who's left college, a biologist, went into the field, they studied CWD for 40 plus years, they retired with not one answer. Now the answers they may have been given were something that somebody said, thus it is. But where did that answer come from? Who determined that that was the answer that you were supposed to give? Okay? So in 1967, most of us have found out that that was when the first so-called detection of CWD, which was, the way I understand it, man started with a study with sheep. So I want you to just think about that with respect to no answers today. The fact that you probably have heard things and you've had questions about them. There's now a lot of questions coming up about infected deer, venison, all those things. And I'm going to get to something later about hunters sharing the harvest and almost what kind of a scam that has become. So I want you to think about something. Khrushchev-Jacobs disease, different sort of avenues and diagnosis has come out of this discussion. What you see today, tonight, in this video, which is only a short excerpt of a video that I would encourage everybody here to go home, get on your laptop, your desktop, whatever, get your child to help you to do it because you may not be able to navigate it. Okay? That's a joke, but it's probably true. It's called They Missed It by a Million Miles. You're going to see this biologist, and he's going to explain to you why it's been such a grief to me that we don't have an answer for something. And by the way, I don't think there's any recorded deer dying of CWD. EHD, for sure. They last about 2 weeks and they die, but not CWD. And there's tremendous amount of money being spent by the deer farmers of America and North America and wide on this problem. And I want you to think about this. I was a bodybuilder at one time, and it was a long time ago. And the reason I bring that up is because half of what I did had to do with what I put in my mouth. Okay? You can train all you want, you can do certain things, but if you destroy the program by not feeding the machine properly, you're going to defeat your purpose. So the things that wildlife is putting in their mouth could very easily be contributing to a problem that we're overlooking. Okay? When you see this video of, I believe it leaves more questions in your mind than it gives you answers. And I'm sure that everybody in this room has heard it's a misfolded protein, and that's what a prion is, and that's what CWD is. Well, since after all these years we don't have any answers, and that's what it's being called, wait till you hear this biologist, and this video has gone pretty actively across the country now, and it's scrambling a lot of people. I'm getting a lot of contacts from all over the country, from a lot of different people on what is going on and why, and it's created a lot of questions, okay? From people worried about eating the meat to people worried about the harvest and, excuse me. And so I want you to watch this with those things in mind. And please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
They tell us it's infectious. They tell us it's the killer of deer. They tell us it's 100% fatal. They tell us that if we feed the deer, we are spreading it. They tell us it's from prions and they are everywhere. They tell us they are trying to stop the spread. They tell us they need our hunter-harvested deer to test for it. They use broken science. They have no answers after 57 years, yet they tell us we are on the verge of an epidemic. The agency's own document, the AFWA, contradicts what they restrict. Evidence to date suggests that restrictions on feeding quantity would not mitigate the potential for disease transmission, and that putative mitigating practices such as spreading feed or bait over a specified area or restricting the kinds of food items that can be used did not substantially reduce the potential risk for disease transmission. The narrative began in 1967. The one piece that is in agreement is CWD is a neurological degenerative disease that is focused on the brain and spinal cord. The rest of the narrative is filled with confusion, doubt, fear, power and funds. Millions of dollars has been spent on research, restrictions, slaughtering, propaganda, and where is the money coming from? There's a simple response: the people. Whether it is from the Pittman-Robertson funds, legislation, or license fees, it is the people. Recently, Federal Bill 5608, CWD Research and Management, was passed in the House with suspended rules and sent to the Senate, where it sat with no action taken for 8 months. The bill was then picked up in the Omnibus Bill, H.R. 2167, in December of 2022. $70 million a year for 6 years, equally $420 million. The bulk of the bill reads that state agencies and tribes can get a crack at millions as long as they follow a certain criteria in which the agencies wrote. New areas of detections, more funds. Strict management, more funds. More detections, more funds. Commitment of funds, more funds. There were many agencies and groups that lobbied or donated to the passing of the bill. Suddenly, an uptick in meetings, slaughtering, testing, and propaganda began across the nation. We aren't seeing the death. Where are all the dead deer they are telling us is happening by CWD? Testing, 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 testing.
And then just to further expand upon one of the chairman's concerns with prions is, are they the cause of chronic wasting disease? And we just have another short clip from the same video addressing this point.
Every image seen of a prion is an artist's impression, just graphics, none of the actual slide or actual image. In 2021, a research paper claimed to have a picture using magnification of 81,000. Well, I used an electron microscope. It's 126,000 magnification, and I can confirm that there are no such things as a prion. If you see germs, you should be able to see a prion. There are no such things as a prion. What the heck are they testing?
So if you'd like further information about this, there's a page back there where you can note the name or follow the QR code. But the entire video itself is just called "They Missed It by a Million Miles." And the chairman really just wants more people to look into this, because it's been how many years since chronic wasting disease has been around?
1967.
Yeah, 1967. We don't know it too much more today. It's worth looking into.
So I want you to think about what you just saw and a couple things that I already mentioned. Who's involved with game management? The money. A member of many, many associations of wildlife, probably more than most, maybe more than everybody in here. But my only point to that is I believe in the mission. I believe in the purpose. But I also am very concerned with what has it become. Okay? I'm gonna read associations and whatnot that you're gonna clearly hear why I'm concerned. And I'm going to also go to something else, that because you heard here what the man said. He said there's no such thing as a prion, and it's a neurological disease that almost everybody agrees to, which means the nervous system, the brain stem, what have you, okay? And just to plant the seed a little bit, I want you to hear something. I just buried a friend, an older carpenter who I knew very well. For those of you who don't know it, I came from the trades. And this older carpenter who I really admired, he started to become very sort of disability progressive. And as he doctored and went on, he stopped work, and as he doctored and things, and his wife happens to be very good friends of my mother-in-law. And the doctors finally said to him, look, Lee, we're diagnosing you with Parkinson's disease, but we have some questions. Do you live near a farm? He said, live near a farm? I live in farm country, and my grass stops up the edge of the cornfield. Sure, I live near a farm for many, many years. They said, oh, okay. And they wanted to drop the subject after they knew where he geographically lived. Does anybody here have any idea why they asked him that? Now, look, I'm probably looking at farmers in here, and I'm not against farming. I try to pretend that a little bit myself. My wife grew up in an orchard. I'm asking you a reason, this question for a purpose, because I believe we might be overlooking something very, very serious. It's glyphosate. It's called Roundup. Okay? You all know probably it's a $17 billion lawsuit, and there's issues across the board with it. But what we don't know is how it's affecting the wildlife. My problem with my friend Lee is that became a neurological problem in his body. Okay? It eventually disabled him to the point where he did all his business in his bed and couldn't get out of it, and he was wiped twice, 3 times a day because of that. Okay? So let's just think about the fact that Habitat, which is the Game Commission's #1 mission given to them by the statute, they have ignored. Now I'm going to ask you, what about the grouse? That's our state bird. For 15 years I've been hounding them on this since I was elected. They're now doing a couple studies. But everybody nationally has said it's the habitat that's killing, the lack thereof, that's killing the grouse. Yeah, they talk about the little bit of the West Nile virus and all those things. How about the pheasant farms? Do you folks in here know what happened to the Pennsylvania pheasant farms that were owned by you, run by the Game Commission? Do you have any idea? They closed them. There was a specific pheasant biologist that for 40 years he studied a specific Pennsylvania resistant pheasant so that it would do well in Pennsylvania landscape. When the last executive director decided it was time, he exited all those pheasants out of those 3 last pheasant farms and closed them. Now just buy it from people like I may know or you may know who raise them. Okay? All of your pheasants and all your biology that you paid for was released. Gone. That's the pheasants. Here's a story for you. The rabbit biologist, after 42 years, walked up to a friend of mine from the Game Commission and said, hey, I worked for the Game Commission for 42 years. What did you do? And the guy said, I was a rabbit biologist. They destroyed all my data before I left. He said, why? He goes, I don't know. But they did. How about the turkey population? I'm an avid turkey hunter. I don't probably have to tell you, they could not be told about the 2-tag spring gobbler menagerie. And this is every time I questioned them on why do you continue with the 2 tags in the spring, the answer I got was they're going to die anyway. That's wildlife management by the Game Commission. 100%. That's how they think. Okay? Now I'm going to give you some statistics. Whether or not you're wearing one of these hats here today or their clothes. That's not my point. My point is the way the system works. The monies that has come out of the budget for these organizations. National Deer Association, $4.4 million. Teddy Roosevelt, $208,000. Rough Grouse Society, $6,334,000. NWTF, $15,207,000. Trout Unlimited, ready for this number? $230 million. Ducks Unlimited, I got a lot of their shirts. $373 million. Pheasants Forever, $152 million. Nature Conservancy, $567 million. Penn State got for mushrooms, $3.7 million. That's just a little extra caveat. Now, one of the reasons I bring that up is because I almost guarantee you've never seen that. But you can look it up. There's at least two sites. One of them is datarepublican.com. You can look it up. You can see it for yourself. That's where I got the numbers. And I want to show you this book. I couldn't hardly put this book down when I got a hold of it. And the reason I'm bringing it up to you is there's ancillary issues with respect to our lives. And I think it's important to sort of know, like, there's warning on cigarette packs. There's warning on gasoline shouldn't be consumed. You know, things like that. So inside this book, on the front forward, is a small paragraph. I got these fancy glasses. I got to put these on. Monsanto knew for decades that glyphosate causes cancer and a deadly retinue of other devastating illnesses. Instead of warning its customers and consumers about those risks, Monsanto manipulated the science, defrauded regulators, bribed prominent researchers, transformed the EPA pesticide division into a cesspool of corruption. What's that sound like? Oh, okay, legislature. And promoted propaganda worldwide. Systemically lying to the public that the deadly pesticide was safe. Like I said, I'm probably talking to farmers, and I try it myself, and I'm not against somebody's way of life or what we know to be a help. What I'm trying to bring up is we might be overlooking something, quite frankly, that's hurting us. This company injured public health, destroyed our soils, exterminated species, wiped out small farmers, and deprived the public of their fundamental civil right of informed consent. Monsanto made a special report of discrediting and destroying scientists, advocates, and reformers who exposed its corrupt cover-up. Among the most prominent of these was heroic MIT researcher Dr. Stephanie Seneff. Her name's on this book. In 2018, I was fortunate enough to be a part of the legal team that finally brought Monsanto to justice. We relied heavily on Dr. Seneff's research to achieve this victory. Robert F. Kennedy. I know you know who he is. I want to round up that, yeah, pun intended. I want to round up that sort of concern of mine by this story. You can look it up. I'd gladly send you the link. This spring, a study came out of your beloved Girl Scout cookies. Now, I have 3 daughters. I now have 7 granddaughters and 6 grandsons. My point for that, bringing that up, is they're dear to us, they're special to us, and they happen to be, in some cases, little sidewalk warriors selling Girl Scout cookies. Right? I know you know, and you're nodding your head. Every flavor of Girl Scout cookies was tested positive with glyphosate. Public doesn't want you to know it. My point for bringing it up is if you're being told, and I have very good, very, very good farming friends who say to me, Dave, we go to these seminars, we're taught, we're explained how you use it, all the rest. We don't deny it, but we just want you to know we're safe. After 12 days, it's out of the soil, all the rest. What did that paragraph say about our soil? Yeah. I told you earlier, my wife grew up on an orchard, which I live on. I'll tell you what my soil samples look like because of the pesticides and the chemicals that my father-in-law and his dad sprayed on those trees. I'm not even saying I'm against it. What I'm saying is I would be dishonest if I ignored the fact that I do the study of the soil to know what kind of lime I could put on or what I need to do to balance the pH or whatever, and my samples are coming out with the chemicals in it because they put it on the ground for years. Okay? So, if the ground is clean after 12 days, how did you plant a seed, harvest the product, make the wheat, bake the cookies, and they test positive? I don't think anybody in here can explain it, but my problem with it is what is happening with the deer that are eating our stuff? And I'll just leave it at stuff. I don't know. It's not being talked about, okay? Again, I'm not a scientist, but I can tell you that there is some sort of a cover-up to not allow us to have a concern identified that's probably contributing to something that if we could at least balance the scales, maybe we wouldn't have this problem. So here's another, this is just a recent publication from somebody I know, and I like this fella. And he calls it, after nearly half a century of failed research toward providing that a misfolded protein called a prion causes CWD, they are now no closer to finding a cure or even a method to diagnose CWD. This is because prions are simply markers for the disease, not the cause. That has been my sort of concern ever since I got on this. A prominent Yale University microbiologist referred to the prion theory as being scientifically impossible. Now, that's another biologist, scientist. Remember, I told you I don't want to be one. But that was two that were quoted today here. It's Biology 101. Researchers working in the lab of the person who first coined the prion said that his research was pseudoscience, that a scientific connection had never been made to show that a misfolded protein causes CWD. I'm almost going to guarantee that every one of you in here have heard the opposite of what I just read. If you went to any kind of seminar, read anything, or heard anything from the Game Commission, and they are slaughtering our whitetail, I would beg anybody here to sort of persuade me otherwise. I hunted the northern tier from the time I was 12. I saw the decimation of the whitetail just like other men and women did. You can't have an estimated population of 1.5 million whitetail deer in Pennsylvania and give out 1.2 doe tags. How does that work? Because if there's an investment that I can put money into like that, I want to do it. Think about that. Now you'll say, well, Dave, we don't kill 1.2 million does. No kidding. But you call that science and wildlife management? To propose to kill almost every deer on the land? Because of what? Oh, we have overpopulation. Yeah, some places you probably do. And I'm going to tell you another thing that offends me about the farming industry, that they've been sold a bill of goods. Did you ever know that your cornfield was a food plot? Didn't you ever know that? I'll tell you what you do. When you go home, look up the movie The Yearling and tell me how that movie goes. It's a cute little movie from the frontier times. But tell me how that movie goes. Because when my wife plants hostas and every other little plant that she thinks is great and beautiful, if I don't have some deterrent and the local deer brings her little babies into the yard, they're going to eat them all. That's what they do. They're browsers. They go from here to here to here to here. And this idea that we're overpopulated with deer is nothing more than another false narrative that's just like CWD. It's just not true. Can there be an overpopulation in places? No doubt about it. But here I'm going to leave you with this study that the Game Commission did. In Northeast Pennsylvania, they did a helicopter study on infrared and white-tailed deer. The folks out there, was Eastern Firearms Coalition and different groups, asked for their coordinates. They finally got the coordinates. They hired their own helicopter, and they went from coordinate to coordinate exactly like the Game Commission did. They didn't come out with 1/10 of the deer that the Game Commission said was there. Now, I could see you could be off a little bit, but that much is just another fat lie. And I, frankly, was not raised that way. I refuse to kowtow to that. Show me the evidence, show me your work, and let's go by merit. And I just don't believe that we're being told anything about the reality, because back in 18 years ago, approximately, there was a report that was asked of the forestry of Pennsylvania. How do you get green certification for our lumber? Now remember, I told you I came from the trades. I built a lot of houses. I bought a lot of wood. The only way you could get green certification, they claimed, was to kill the white-tailed deer off in Pennsylvania's forests because they overbrowsed the land. That was the report. That was what they came up with, and now you're seeing the result of it. You might say to me, Dave, there's enough. Okay, fine. My point is, don't tell me it's sunny and 95 degrees outside when it's raining. That's my point. Don't lie. Show me the science. You just heard, no science. You know, I just read, no science. So what are we being told? Just do this so we get the money? I read you the money too. And you saw the money on that. Now you know why 15 years in that legislature has driven me to be as passionate in front of you people as you see tonight. I only have so much time in this life. But I don't believe my children or my grandchildren are going to live the life that I did in Pennsylvania. I don't believe it for a minute. I trapped a lot. You might see groundhogs, and you might see the raccoons. But raccoons, squirrels, bear, and deer all love cornfields. You can have a soybean field in the midst of woods. You're not going to see the deer standing in the middle of the day in the soybean field. I ask the farmers back home all the time. I said, if there's so many deer, where are they during the day? Tell me where they're at. Oh, well, Dave, they come from the woods. Oh, okay. They got to be somewhere, right? But they travel to your food plot, which is your crop fields. And they're going to finish every bit of that in there as long as they can get away with it. So I mixed a little bit of the issues here today, but I want you to think about it. If you have GMO seeds and you have sprays and you have glyphosate and you have things that are really not leaving the soil and they're coming through the plants and it's breaking down the neurological defense of the white-tailed deer, my question is it possible that's where CWD is being aggravated from? I don't have the answer, but I can tell you neither do they. They only know kill the white-tailed deer. That's what they're doing. Do you know you can kill deer in Pennsylvania now for 8 months? You went from 2 weeks and 3 days of doe season to 8 months of the slaughter of the white-tailed deer. I want you to tell me how that is wildlife management. How? Well, that's a part of it. But the Game Commission doesn't need money. They have $600 million in reserve from gas money. They don't need the cash. They have an agenda. Their agenda is to kill the white-tailed deer. And that's where we're at. The proof is in the pudding, and we'll continue with the rest of the dialogue. But I believe you folks deserve to know those statistics and those things that are front and center that you're frankly not hearing anywhere else. So let's continue.
So we covered a lot of issues. We've heard a lot of concerns, some ideas, bits of our history, and ideas for our future. And now we want to open it up for just conversation. Anyone have any questions about regulations? Do we have ideas for habitat management? If you could just walk up to the microphone.
We have to be able to hear you. Can you get up to the microphone, please? Right here in the front.
Concerning this CWD, I received a postcard from the Game Commission, and it says, okay, I hunt 4C. Now, if I shoot a deer in 4C, I've been taking my deer for years down to Elizabethville to get butchered. I cannot, the way I think, it says you cannot transport them into another area. I want to know, is that what it is or what?
Well, I'm not so sure. I mean, I heard your question, but when you say I want to know if that's what it is, so I can be clear, what is your question about that?
The question is, if I shoot a deer in 4C, and I want to take it where I've been getting them butchered, I cannot bring that whole deer across into like 4E or somewhere because of this CWD.
Okay, so,
They're saying, that's what the postcard
okay. I just wanted to make sure I was clear with that. So there's a couple things I could talk about that. So the idea is brain matter, spinal cord, or organs are holding this vicious disease inside this carcass. And the idea is that you could potentially spread that, okay? Well, I'm not going to go there so much as it is that's what they're saying they're concerned with. Okay. I also had a butcher in Bucks County, pretty far away from here, who was 1/2 of a mile from New Jersey. Most people don't know this story happened. Only a couple years ago, that man came to me in the Capitol and asked me in a very concerned way that his business was being so heavily impacted by what the Game Commission was doing to him that he wanted to know what he could do. And he said, and by the way, I've developed a process to take care of these deer to keep them from any kind of spread, any kind of organ contamination, anything. I said, well, let me work on it. I'd like to give them their time, and this is the last executive director. And I said, Brian, I have this proposal. Do you have a comment? He said, let me give it to my biologist and let him talk about it. I said, okay. So it took a while, and it came back to me, and he goes, well, Rep, we've come to a really great decision. We have found a way that if they follow this procedure, they're good to go. I said, you mean the procedure that he gave to you? You mean that one? He goes, yeah. I said, oh. So you leave it up to the butcher to be harassed, and then he comes up with the idea of how they can be safe with this, and then you say, oh, okay. So the reason I bring up that story is I understand this so-called contamination problem. Do I agree with it? Well, the jury's out on that because of this reason. If this disease is so contaminating, I probably don't have to tell you that deer pooped in the woods. That deer peed in the woods. And that deer was mated in the woods. That's all body fluid. That's all in the soil. If it's so contaminating, and there's all these deer running all over the landscape, how comes everything isn't contaminated? You can't go out into the woods and scoop up dirt and get the test. I think we're just all being told something that's not necessarily accurate, but I understand the concern. I shot a really nice big buck in Missouri. I was invited out there by my chiropractor, and he spends a lot of money to have good land. They have an EHD problem. But they also have this CWD concern, right? When I shot the buck, along with my retired science teacher and farmer from school, we were told to go down the road and come into this parking lot and break up into two lines. And it was if you were going to mount your deer or if you weren't going to mount your deer. And you went into this line. If you weren't going to mount your deer, they cut a gland out of the neck. If you were going to mount your deer, they said, have a good day. I looked at my friend Charlie. I said, hey, what's with that? He goes, yeah, I guess that's a special deer. So the inconsistency is everywhere when it comes to the hype. And again, if they could only prove to me, do you know what the deer farmers are concerned with? They get told that they have a deer that tests positive. But no other deer in the pen is positive. Out of 100 deer. How's that work? They don't know. They have spent millions of dollars researching the resistance of the white-tailed deer in Pennsylvania. And this goes to the point that we already talked about. What they have done is they have genetically bred the deer to be resistant of the disease, whatever that is. So that tells me that something environmentally isn't affecting that deer. And that deer is now resistant enough to it that it doesn't show any side effects, it's healthy, life goes on. So they have spent a lot of money. You know what I proposed? I proposed that they take some of these enclosures that the Game Commission owns and get some super studly deer from the deer farmers and put them in that pen and breed Pennsylvania does and then let them back out in the landscape. They would never do that. Because then they'd have healthy deer, according to them. Okay? So I know that some of this is almost ridiculously comical, but I find it to be tremendously serious because, to your point, there really isn't good science to say you can't do this. But they are getting money. That's what that gentleman back there said. He said it has to do with money. Well, we saw that on the video. So if they continuously get all of Pennsylvania that way, they'll just keep raking in federal money. Right? Anybody else have a question? I'm going to go to Pittman Robertson funds just real quickly because it might stimulate another question. Pittman Robertson funds, I think everybody here knows where it comes from. Just like the Fish Commission gets their own, which is the Dingman Johnson money. But you know, all the ammunition and the excise tax on the guns and stuff is paid by all the sportsmen and those who buy firearms and ammunition. That money has a specific allocation as it goes back to the states. And it's supposed to be used for habitat. And it has criteria attached to it that if you use Pittman Robertson funds in any way, shape, or form on a place in Pennsylvania, you have to respect that and not do anything like sell the property. Who knows about the Glen-Oco Falls in Carbon County? That has lots of Pittman Robertson funds money on it, and the governor went together with the Senate and the Game Commission, and they took that land and gave it to the DCNR. Made some swap in a couple other places in the state. That's in direct violation to the Pittman Robertson funds as I read it, and as the federal government has told me so. but I'm also going to show you this revenue. A 10% excise tax on handguns, 11% on the ammunition and other firearms and archery equipment. $1.2 billion was raised during the 23 fiscal year. And this is a pie chart. I think I have all those pieces of paper there. Griffin put them all out there. You can pick that stuff up. It's very what goes on. Now I'm going to go down a couple concerns of mine. A problem with the leadership issues with the Game Commission pretty much from the time I came in there. If you remember Tom Corbett, when a certain individual was being proposed to be the new executive director, and he had the largest ethics violation in the history of Pennsylvania come down on him. He had to pay a $75,000 fine, and Governor Corbett at the time, taking leadership, said, "You make him your executive director. I want every one of your resignations on my desk tomorrow." Well, they got all huffy and ticked off at him for that, and then that man, retired. So that was just an issue that sort of brewed, and many people wondered about that. And then the last executive director, when I challenged him in a hearing about running a side job and using his position to benefit by sort of strong-arming the employees to buy from him, he had to resign. By the way, his underling was the one that took it to the commissioners and said, "You have a problem. And by the way, you can appoint me. And that's your new executive director." No vetting process. He said to me that because he had some dirt on some of the commissioners because they had possibly purchased from the executive director. They didn't want that known, so they just made him the new executive director. What was that was said earlier today about politics? You can figure that one out. So they hired an external lobbyist. You probably heard about that. You probably heard about when I uncovered that they took 33 employees and spent $70-some thousand to go to Nashville, Tennessee on your money, on your Sportsman money down there, and they did a bar hop. That was beneficial to the Sportsmen back in Pennsylvania for them to do that. And when that got uncovered, and the very fact that they bought alcohol illegally by code on the employee handbook, the governor did nothing about that. They sponsored, for those of you that don't know it, I also chair the Motorsports Caucus in Pennsylvania, and I believe motorsports and sportsmen very much cross, and we are many like-minded folks and enjoy the different activities like that. And I've been blessed enough to be in connection with a lot of NASCAR drivers and different people like that in the dirt tracks. Actually was instrumental in a study that was done, an economic impact study that was done for Pennsylvania, which is like $4 billion just for the motorsports in Pennsylvania, which is pretty parallel to the Sportsmen in Pennsylvania. And I uncovered that the Game Commission was using your money to sponsor a stock car by the guy's daughter's boyfriend. I hope that made you feel good. Haldeman Island outside of Harrisburg is a piece of property the Game Commission owns. And they violated Pittman Robertson requirements, built a building for $500,000. They put a lot of money into some buildings. And the federal government told them, "You can't do that, tear it down." By the way, that was your money, just in case you were wondering about that. So as you can see, to me, there's a pattern. It's very concerning, and I just don't feel that there is an accountability, because the independent agency, as probably well developed in the beginning, has gone rogue. And now I'm going to give you probably one of my latest pet peeves. Property taxes to me is a big problem in Pennsylvania. It was considered it was ruled on as being unconstitutional. I knew that lawsuit was in court, and I knew that it was going to be a big deal for Pennsylvania because there was no way you could say it was constitutional. And so I had authored a constitutional amendment, which was on the homestead farmstead provision in Pennsylvania, and you all have that probably. You see that little bit that you get from gaming and whatnot. But when they came to me last session and they asked me if I'd be willing to allow the Game Commission to up their ante on PILT. PILT is the acronym for Payment in Lieu of Taxes. So the Game Commission in itself, just like every other government agency, is a nonprofit. And so they don't pay property tax. And so because they have 1.5 million acres of land, and that's scattered throughout the state, it impacts different communities in different places, right? So it might be up in northern tier, and there might be a couple thousand acres that, because that's not commercial or industrial or residential, you're not getting the property tax impact that you would if it was down here or down my way. So the idea was that they would pay more money in lieu of taxes. What the Senate did was they allowed them in the fiscal code to use your property tax rent rebate to pay that. I'm going to repeat that. The Game Commission can use the property tax rent rebate account to pay in lieu of taxes out of the pot that's supposed to be given to you. Just in case you didn't know that. So, as you can see, we hit on quite a few different things tonight. And I'm going to, again, open up the microphone to any other questions you may have. And don't ever forget, you can get on my website. You can call me. Many of you know I'm very accessible. And I intend to have another one of these events close by, maybe within an hour. And I'll continue to do that. I'll get to the western part of the state hopefully soon. And I really appreciate the attendance, your questions, and I hope it was informative.
That we had discussed today, and I go into more detail on some of those handouts. My card is up there. If anyone has any questions, has a regulatory question, a legal question, send it my way, and I can help. More than happy to help you out. If you have a great idea that you'd want to see become law, we're happy to help you.
And I will also add that I have had a much different cooperation with the Fish Commission than I have with the Game Commission. And there are grants available for access to your pond, different things like that you may be interested in, and I would be glad to help you with that if it applies to you guys. Okay? So, look, I'm a sportsman, guys. I only have so much time left, just like you all do, which, again, is another reason for why I think it's nonsense to not let a senior shoot a deer that doesn't have point restriction. I mean, I don't know why you don't think it could be his last day out. If you're going to let the juniors shoot him, why not let a senior shoot him? Why not let him shoot a Y-buck? If you want to kill the deer anyway, what's the point? But they resist that tooth and nail, and so do a lot of my colleagues. So I don't want to go to the deer management part of it so much, but I will tell you, matter of fact, I went to the Michigan Whitetail Museum last summer. I looked for a whitetail from Pennsylvania in there, none to be found. I went to many other places throughout the country. There's very few, if any, whitetail from Pennsylvania in there. To be honest with you, I don't believe the answer is point restriction to the extent that, yeah, you could see a 2.5-year-old buck make it to 3.5 and 4.5. And yes, I've been blessed to have a couple records myself. But I don't think that's different things. And I shot the triple trophy in 16 with my bow. And by the way, the Game Commission smeared me on that one too. And if you'd like to see the text messages and emails, I'll share them with you. And I don't see why we should have such a resistance from an agency that's supposed to be serving us, not hurting us. And so that's my passion. I believe that the hunting heritage of Pennsylvania has been something second to nowhere else. And I will also say that I have a problem with the Sunday hunting piece where I believe it divided. The camps. I think it should have been left up to the hunters to decide. And I will tell you, it's never been better than 50-50 across the whole Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You can go into a club, it'll be 75-25. You can go to another club, it'll be the opposite. You can go into most clubs, it's 50-50. That's not my point. A lot of my point is the fact that don't put us against each other, and don't hurt our tradition and heritage by some grab. Because right now, folks, don't embarrass yourself by saying we didn't have enough time to hunt when you can now kill for 8 months. Look, go get a red tag. Go get a DMAP tag. You can literally kill deer for 8 months. I have an orchard down the road from my house that has fencing on 3 sides of his orchard and the other side's open. Should he be arrested? You know what those deer do? They run inside there and then he slaughters them at night with a light. Is that deer management? What about the guys that are busting their tail, putting in food plots, and they got their tree stands and they're hunting their tail off? And those deer run into that guy's fence and he kills them. I don't understand how we think that's sportsmanlike. That's just my pet peeve. But anyway, as you can see, I get a little bit passionate about this stuff where I think we've lost our sight of what we're about. And I just hope we can fix it. So again, thanks again. And I want to thank the staff here. What a tremendous job. Look at all them lights blinking. And it looks like Mission Central over there. And God bless you all. I hope you have a great season.
Thank you.